I'm Jay Horton. I make movies that make money, and this is Filmmakers On. Today, I'm talking to the founder of a very interesting new company, Kinema. Any filmmakers out there looking for another avenue of distribution that's not just streaming, you should definitely check this one out. Let's do the interview thing. Okay, so I'm here with Christie Marchese, the founder of Kinema. It's pronounced Kinema,
Hi.
right?
Yep, you got it right. It's like
Okay.
cinema, but with a K.
That's what I thought. That's a cool name. That's a cool name.
Oh, thanks.
Yeah. So can you tell me, let's start out real quick. What is Kinema?
There's a couple different ways to say it, but what we say is we're helping people launch their own movie theater so they can support the filmmaking they want to see. So we make it easy and fun and socially and financially rewarding for anyone, anywhere to show movies, in
Oh,
person or online.
oh, wow.
Yeah.
Like how does that work? Like nuts and bolts wise?
Yeah, nuts and bolts. We kind of have two approaches. We have kind of building the operating system for film delivery and co-viewing, and then also building out relationships with mixed use spaces and screening hosts. So think of it as if you're hosting an in-person screening, you have access to a space in some way, whether it's a community center or a library or church, but you already have essentially a movie theater set up, but you aren't a movie theater. And then we work with you on the licensing and the curation and the film delivery. So on the tech side, we built an offline player. So you as the filmmaker could upload your film and run your in-person screening tour through it. All of the hosts would have access to it, pay the licensing fee or sell tickets, and get access to the film online, download it safely and securely, and then it disappears after their event.
Oh, wow. Okay. So how did this come about? Why did you start this?
Sure. So my whole career has been at this mix of digital, social media, entertainment, film, and community building or social impact. Somewhere kind of utilizing those three areas. So for the last 9 years, I ran an impact agency called Picture Motion. And so we worked with all the studios, streamers, and a lot of amazing independent filmmakers to develop and implement their social impact campaigns. So from that, on every campaign we worked on, we ended up just running a screening tour, because what we were finding is, especially for independent filmmakers, they were really in charge of managing that non-theatrical license. So meaning it might go into theaters and it might go onto a streamer, but they definitely wanted to have in-person screenings outside of just that traditional theater experience. So we started running those tours for them, building up relationships with mixed-use spaces and screening hosts. And the idea originally was, could we use technology to help do this better and faster and for more filmmakers? As an agency model, we were only able to work with the filmmakers or distributors that hired us at Picture Motion. And they do amazing bespoke impact campaigns, but could only take on so many. And so the idea was, let's create technology to do better film delivery, asset delivery, licensing management, and build relationships and a brand with our screening hosts and be known for just that distribution piece. And so that's what we started to do right before the pandemic hit. Pretty much. So we've been around for a bit, but only because we've taken a couple different forms. Like our launch date was March 2020.
Oh,
initially.
Wow.
Yeah, well timed on our part.
Wow. Yeah, you can't account for that at all. I was just listening to a filmmaker talk about how they were just getting ready to go. They were doing a city by city tour. And they were floor walling, and they had, I don't know, they must have pre-booked like, I don't know, 20 theaters across the nation, and it's just dead. They started
exactly.
Yeah, they started January 2020.
Oof, that's tough too. And I don't even know what those deals would look like if they rented those spaces, or if they had a distributor they're working with to book those spaces for them, or what money was exchanged. But I hope they were able to live out that tour post-pandemic or get some of that money back.
When a filmmaker wants to do this, what kind of deliverables does this take?
Yeah, it's pretty simple. So right now we still are doing some level of curation. Over time, we want to open up so anybody can use the technology and run their own tour. Right now, because just we're a small team, we're doing some curation. So, reach out to us, send us a film, chat with us if we think it's a great fit for the network of hosts we have. We want to work with you. But it's really just an uploading of the film file. So we can play up to 4K, and it goes into the system, super secure. We've got our TPN security assessment. We've got all the DRM approvals, and then a limited set of assets. So what's your trailer, your photos? The more you can send us, the better, because it's not just for us. It's what we then pass on to the screening host so that they can market their event. So the way we work is that we're both that operating system. So you can run your screening tour without having to ship DVDs or send assets or track your licensing. And then also building those relationships with the screening hosts. And what we found is, we as a company, as a platform, like we don't do the audience engagement. We're not necessarily driving audiences to each of these individual screenings because the hosts are. Each of the hosts we work with have their own following and their own network. But one of the things that they ask for often are just more assets. So give them social media like assets, create film stills that are the shape for Insta stories. So to answer the question, bare minimum is film file, assets, a press kit's helpful, trailer. But the more you can give for hosts to get creative and telling the story of why their audience should see your film, the better.
Right. And this will be my last technical question, but like as far as the film files, is it like strictly DCP, or are you guys taking like .mov, like ProRes files, or?
Yeah. Oh my God. Now I have to get our CTO on this.
I mean, you don't have to get too into the weeds. I was just curious.
Yeah, I can actually pull it up because we have like a one sheet we send over, but essentially, yes, it's a digital file that you upload via Massive to our platform, and then it gets all encoded and protected and everything. So the idea is that you do just one single upload, and then you can then, as a filmmaker, do your own outreach or work with us, and we do additional outreach to our network. And then the host just goes in and picks the film, picks the date and time. And then they download a local player, and then essentially they get access to the film, and we can monitor how often that film is viewed. So awesome. Basically, so that way your film is protected. We know how many times it's being watched or how many times it's being used for an event. And that's all for the offline in person. We actually also built the virtual product. So just to respond to the technical questions, when the pandemic hit and we could no longer be outside or tell people to go into these cool spaces to watch movies, we spent time building a virtual product. We knew we were going to be in it for a while. So now as a host, you can actually choose, do I want to have the screening in person if I have the capabilities? Or if I don't, I can actually still create a virtual cinema, have live chat, have live video, Q&A the filmmakers, and sell tickets and make money.
Okay, that makes sense. So let's get into, I was checking out the website. I saw something you were talking about cinema deserts and how social media is helping to eliminate them.
I would say we call it like social cinema more than when we looked at cinema deserts, we looked at a couple different ways. Part of it was looking at where we were doing work at Picture Motion, where are films screening? And we looked at where movie theaters are and saw that there was a difference. You got half of America's movie theaters in 4 states. It makes sense population wise. But where people were booking screenings, it was actually just outside those cities or in more rural areas or more urban areas. Ava DuVernay and Array does this really, really well. They always talk about how Selma couldn't play in Selma. Shota Compton couldn't play in Compton. They're kind of smaller neighborhoods, don't have the same type of either independent or larger cinema. So for us, those are the areas we want to work with. The areas where we're bringing in independent film, bringing in new voices. The best example we have, and we talk about him a lot, so it's probably getting sick of us, but Pastor Greg in Clarksville, Tennessee. I mean, he said, the closest indie film theater is 90 minutes away in Nashville. And they have a large, regal, amazing movie theater that'll play the Marvels, but he wants to bring in more arts and culture. And so he curates a film series and plays documentaries for his community. And those are the type of that's our way of addressing or participating in filling in these cinema deserts.
Right. Yeah. And I could see how that could be helpful too. I know from, past experience, just trying to do some floor walling stuff as an independent filmmaker, it's difficult and expensive. And it's nice to have somebody to help guide you through that, to do the legwork.
I mean, that's a perfect example. So as a filmmaker, you want your film to play like in person, you want to have group viewings of it. The intention is to be, created to be enjoyed that way. But also it's a lot of work. It's a lot of scatter. It's managing these different relationships, doing that outreach yourself. So our intention over time is not just to provide the tools for any filmmaker to run their own tour, but also help with that distribution piece. We're building relationships with mixed use spaces, with communal spaces, with communities to do repeat bookings. We joke that if every church in America was a movie theater on Monday night, that's the goal we're looking at. What are those spaces where people are regularly communing or have that technology? And can we essentially verify them or register them like as a kinema and then make those accessible to filmmakers and do that kind of pairing system so that you can do your outreach to those individual churches, but also we have them registered as saying, I would like to show films. Here's what I'm interested in. Send it to me.
Yeah, because I can hear it now. There'll be some independent filmmaker dissenters. They'll say, "Well, I could just do this myself. Why do I need somebody to do this?" But just finding the theaters that will take your movie and get them to agree to screen it or the place is not an easy task. Like there are some that do it, pretty readily, but for the most part, especially if you're trying to do multiple screenings in different locations, to have that all together, would definitely be worth the money.
That's what we're looking for too. And like for us, it's all like, it's a revenue share. We'll take 10% of the ticket sales from the host, or 10 to 20% of the licensing fee. So we're trying to keep the cost really, really low on our side. And again, leaning on technology to solve a lot of these questions. There's, bots for customer service. If a host has a question, a lot of those answers are built in already because you get the same question. So that saves us time. It saves the filmmaker time. So the other thing that made me think of is, when doing this for the last decade plus, we work with all these different film campaigns at Picture Motion, and a lot of them are on similar themes. And so we know if a host like this film, they're going to like this film and this film and this film. But we were able to do that kind of as an agency because we was already built into our system. And we were talking to filmmakers, and then you're running your whole tour yourself. You're building up these relationships, and unless you're doing a film on a similar topic, or immediately after, it might be 3 years over. Exactly, you're starting all over. And we hear from filmmakers that they want to share resources, but also it's tough. You spend how much time and money building that list, and so do you just offer it to someone else, or how does that work? And so we've been watching the industry too, try and figure out, how do we do this? How do we work together on this? How do we compile lists on it? There's a great organization called Distribution Advocates that are trying to figure this out too. How can filmmakers share their lists with each other? I think it's Karen Chen, Chien, and Amy Hobby that are really leading that effort. And we're all trying to address this in different ways. Yeah.
That's really cool. Do you think that this could be not the whole future of independent film, but it could be a strong component of an independent film release in the future?
Yeah, I think absolutely. We look at the non, it's specifically the non-theatrical license, and so it is sometimes underutilized just because it's a lot of work. It's a lot of scatter. And so my last company would work with distributors who own those rights because it would be pretty time intensive. You get a lot of the same questions. The system is usually just an email address or a form, and it takes 10 steps. And then oftentimes there's different needs of a DVD or a DCP or a Blu-ray. For us, we're trying to simplify that and say it's only digital download. So as long as you have a computer, we're not sending DVDs, and these are not for spaces that have DCP capabilities. And the tracking all happens on the back end. We know who's got a license or who's selling tickets. We know how many times they've opened that film file. We know if they want to play it past the date they said they booked, they have to get another license. So we have all that kind of done on the tech platform, and it's part for the filmmakers to use and have access to, and part for us to build that network of screening hosts.
Yeah, and sorry, this might be too technical, but I was curious when you give something to a theater or a venue, so that they don't physically download the copy, they're streaming it off of your server. Is that something like that?
Great question. It's actually they do literally download the film, but again, it's super secure. It's locally stored on your computer, so you cannot record the screen. Meaning, if someone's we put as many precautions as possible to prevent people from stealing the film. One is, it's download your computer, but you can't actually take it anywhere. It's locally on your browser. Second is you can't screen record it. And the third is, for if the filmmakers or distributors have opted into it, we have forensic and visual watermarking. So when we surveyed our hosts before we started all of this, one of the big sticking points was just film delivery. Lost DVD in the mail, DVD scratched, it got delivered to the wrong classroom door, and they didn't realize it till one day before. And so there was so much scrambling around this, and just so risky, because then if you wanted to get that DVD back, now you have to have a return system. So what we found is almost all of our hosts wanted the ability to play off a computer, but they couldn't rely on streaming because you're relying on the internet, and there might be a risk of disruption, especially if you're in an outdoor space. And so that's why we really invested 2019, 2020, before we even launched, in building this offline player and this management system for film delivery. So again, to use the filmmaker, do one upload, and all of the hosts, however many hundreds or thousands you're working with, just have to do a log into their account and download to their computer.
And just ballpark, like how many venues would you say currently you have relations with?
Yeah, I think probably now about 21,000 that we have relationships with, but only in the last year, a lot of them did digital, but that's what we call it active booked is just over 500. I gotta see what the numbers are this week. The intention is much higher than that. I got to check my numbers. There's 25,000 screens in the US. There's 5,000 movie theaters. But you've got like a million of mixed use spaces. So even if we just get the libraries involved and formally registered and verified as a movie theater, you got basically almost comparable numbers to what to both either screens or theaters that we have currently.
I find this really fascinating. I'd looked a little bit into it, but this is really interesting. Are you guys the first to do this, or are there other people that have done this before? I honestly, this is the first I've heard of it.
It's a mix. I mean, we've done it a few different ways. What's changed in the last year are probably technology and secure film delivery and desire to not use DVDs and DCPs anymore. So I think that we've seen a few things. There's education distributors that do something similar. Anyone that runs that non-theatrical or education license and is a distributor for that is somewhat similar in that way, because it's not theatrical, it's not home viewing, it's meant for a group, but you have a host or a partner that's really acting as a movie theater in that way.
Right.
In the pandemic, we saw a bunch of what's it called? Digital co-viewing types pop up. Show and Tell is doing an amazing job of this type of partner distribution. Hoovie up in Canada has been working on this too, with a similar idea of like, if a host can just go on and create their own virtual cinema, they can kind of do it themselves, create it themselves, and then the filmmaker can just do that outreach and drive to that. So I think there's something similar. There's a couple ideas percolating, but we're all just approaching it from different ways.
Right. And at least right now, are there like particular like genres that you look for, or are you trying to open it up across the board? Like, how does that work?
Yeah, it's fun because we're defining that right now. I think the films that have done this really well historically have been social impact and documentary films, because they have a really naturally built-in audience that knows how to organize and get people to show up to screenings. And that's a lot of what our background is in. It's what I've worked in, since many of the filmmakers I work with come from that background. So I'd say that's where we're kind of centered right now. But the idea is that we want to be able to curate a wide range of, fantastic quality, however, we interpret quality, which is really just great story, interested in storytelling from a range of filmmakers, from a range of perspectives, so that we have a wide enough library that any of our hosts who are kind of going to be more niche focused have opportunities or have options to book from. Meaning like the host in Ohio who really likes music documentaries will have enough music documentaries to pick from, because we'll be building those deals with the distributors or independent filmmakers and listing them on the site. Or the activist filmmaker who will do anything on refugees, which is something that we should be talking about right now, given what's going on in Afghanistan. So we want to be able to curate a wide enough library for that. We're just trying to find that sweet spot of like, what is that kind of focus in terms of curation without being too limiting, because it's less about us and we're more about being a pass through to what our individual hosts and non-theaters want.
Right. Yeah. It seems to me like it'll start out a little more narrow, and as time goes on, you create these new relationships and you find new avenues for this and that will widen out.
Exactly. And right now, because we have a few close relationships, if we have a host that's saying, I need to do an 8-week series on food, what do you have? We'll also just go out and put out an APP saying, hey, and the filmmakers we worked with, do you have anything in the last 3 years on this topic? Distributors, what do you have in your library that we can bring on? So we're also curating a little bit on that level too.
Right. That is neat. So how do you think that social cinema complements movie theaters rather than competes with them?
I think it expands the footprint. So if your film is, going to 20 markets, or let's say you're even for Disney product and you're going to 1,200 theaters or whatever that number is, there are still spots in between. We want to work, we fill in the gaps of a film release theatrically, meaning if your film is in 20 markets or Disney puts it into 1,200 theaters, there are still pockets all throughout the US and neighborhoods that will screen these films and that can fit as a part of the distribution, meaning expanding that footprint. So if you're looking at this data from the source I can't remember right now, people won't drive more than 25 miles to go to a movie theater. A lot of ticket data shows that people will buy a ticket to a movie theater within 5 miles. So it's even tighter. That leaves out large pockets of the US. And even then, these are still probably major films. These are not smaller indie art house films that would work in certain neighborhoods. There aren't foreign language films, which would perform well in different diasporic areas. So it's less about competing with theaters at all. that would be wonderful to think about if we'd ever be that large, but really more about filling in the gaps of what a theatrical release looks like for a film, or of being that theatrical release for the independent films that don't have the opportunity to get a distribution deal.
Right. And like you were saying earlier, this is a way to really like laser down into specific target audiences. Like movies can just be released here, and here instead of like everywhere where you might honestly start losing money, like trying to reach out too wide. And this can more specifically target.
Yeah. Well, that geo-blocking was so important. And so we built that into the system. So if you're a filmmaker and let's say you only have your US rights, or you have your US rights, but you actually have you're working with a distributor and you're going to be in 5 markets, we can then still list your film as available to our hosts, but block out those 5 markets. So if I'm a host in New York and LA or Chicago, I can't book this film in the next 2 months. But if in Nebraska and there's no showings here, then I can book the film opening weekend, as same weekend it opens in Los Angeles, New York, and Chicago.
The other thing I can think of that would be a positive impact for this would be the impact that this, storytelling and accessible content would have to some more, like minority communities.
Yeah, I mean, that's what you say. It supports the filmmaking you want to see. So what directors do you want to program? If you were to run if you're a film buff and want to run your own movie theater, what would you program? So we want to help source that licensing, help with the film delivery. And over time, we do want to find a way to pair, the open space, that venue that might be a rental, with that passionate individual or organizer or movie theater like dream owner, and pull them together. So that, a lot of people that work in film or that are filmmakers also just love film. I worked in a movie theater when I was in high school. And so we see this next generation coming up as a mix of gig economy workers or trading on their influence. If you're just a film lover and you want to be that curator for your friends, you can go into our list of films, pick a film that's maybe niche or maybe going to be new to your friend group or new to your community. And whether you're putting it into your space or hosting the virtual screening, you're selling tickets and making money off that. So it is a small business or source of revenue for some of our hosts.
And it goes along with the importance of uplifting independent filmmakers and their stories. It's just, it's neat.
Yeah, I think for us, we just want to keep being a facilitator of that, right? So we want to curate, we want to list these films on the platform. We look at our data too. It's not that everything should just be purely data. Like we're not trying to meet certain numbers, but we do want to pay attention. How many films are we representing or bringing on at this stage are female directed or have people of color at the forefront in the story, or pass the Bechdel test, like some of those basic things we're monitoring because we aren't completely open to anyone to upload their film just yet.
That's great. So if people want to know more, they want to look out, where do they go for information?
Sure. I mean, one, you can just email me directly. I'm happy to talk with any filmmakers. We have 2 amazing people on our film team that talk with filmmakers regularly. So just email me at Christie@kinema.com. I also encourage people just go experience it. Go to kinema.com/discover and attend one of the public events. The easiest ones are usually virtually right now as we're building up our events. So I'd say do come to one virtually, kinema.com/discover, or reach out to us through the forum and email on our website and just start a conversation.
Awesome. And then Christie, is there anything that I haven't covered that you'd like to say about it?
You made me think of something that it's not that I wanted to say it. It just popped in my head when you're talking about social media.
Yeah, it's great.
And I was thinking, like one way we look at our partnerships with these amazing screening hosts and organizers is that they're influencers and they're micro influencers, and not in like the kind of shishi Instagram influencer, go to this beach in Tulum type way, but like they have a community of people that listen to them. And you look at what works in marketing, besides that great trailer and that great poster, it's word of mouth from that trusted resource. Mm-hmm. And so even if like you're running a tour this way and you have hosts that are promoting your film, we look at even some of our smaller screenings of like 30 to 50 people. To get 30 to 50 people to show up, you're marketing to hundreds of people. They're posting on their social. So even, doing this type of tour or focusing on, or making it important to build in this type of screening tour to your film's release, it's not just about the distribution and the revenue from the licensing, it's that additional marketing that you're getting. So I think I hope more filmmakers pay attention. A lot of them already are, especially coming from the doc and social impact space. And I guess part of what, why we enjoy doing this type of work is part of the tools that we've built make it easy for the filmmaker to connect with that host and that audience directly. So in that, if your film's on the platform, you get access to data. You're going to know what your demographics are. You're going to know where the film is screening. You also can make yourself available for bookings, and you could, put up your speaking fee for, Zooming for 30 minutes. So it's also helping build a direct relationship to those micro influencer hosts and then to their audience.
That's great. Well, Christie, thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. And I'm definitely going to check it out because, you probably know I do a lot of documentaries myself, so I'll check that out.
I do. I listened to your podcast. That's why I was really stoked about this too. I do. Yeah. Yes. I think it's incredibly informative. Like you ask these really great questions and you dig deep of, okay, so tell me, why did you work with U2? What was the revenue split on this? I'd say if you're curious, like for this, whenever, like down the line, I'd be happy to send you filmmakers we've worked with. And so how they run their screening tours.
Yeah, absolutely. Awesome. Like I want, because I've primarily over the last year, I've focused a lot on the, strictly streaming, a little bit of physical media, but I've always been interested more in trying to break into a more physical space, like whether it be theatrical or, like venue based event stuff. And to be honest, I've been in the industry for 20 years and I don't even know where to start, which is why I think something like this is so cool.
Oh, thanks. No, we love what we're doing. I like that this is, I love films. I'm not a great filmmaker. This is the way I want to be involved. I'm filmmaker adjacent. Like I want to solve this problem. Like I want to figure this out. And that's why I love doing this. So
seriously, the second I got off the Zoom interview with her, I went to the website and started checking it out. It looks really cool. And I'm currently talking to them about doing a couple of my documentaries. I highly recommend checking them out. If you're liking these interviews, don't forget to subscribe and check out some of my movies at zapruderflix.com. But whatever you do, keep making movies.